People think staying calm in trading means feeling nothing. Like some kind of emotional shutdown, where fear and excitement disappear. But that idea couldn't be further from the truth, because I've never met a successful trader who didn't feel pressure. I've only met traders who learned how to carry it without letting it hijack their decisions. In my early years, pressure owned me. It tightened my chest, shortened my breath, narrowed my vision until all I could see was the next tick, the next candle, the next moment, where everything might go wrong. I thought calmness would arrive once I made enough money or gained enough experience. But what I didn't understand then was that pressure doesn't go away. As stakes rise, it evolves. Bigger size doesn't bring peace, it brings louder consequences. And if you haven't learned how to stay steady at small scale, the market will expose you mercilessly when scale increases. My first real confrontation with pressure came not during a crash, but during a winning streak. I was up consistently, confidence was high, and every trade felt important, because it felt like momentum could vanish at any second. That constant vigilance was exhausting, and it pushed me into a state where I was always slightly on edge, always leaning forward, always reacting. I mistook that tension for focus. In reality, it was anxiety dressed up as professionalism. The pressure didn't come from the market, it came from my attachment to outcomes. I needed trades to work to maintain a feeling about myself, and that dependency made calm impossible. I remember one trade in particular, where everything was set up perfectly, at least on paper, and as price approached my level, my heart rate spiked like I was in physical danger. My hands were steady, but my mind was racing, imagining outcomes, rehearsing regret, projecting futures that hadn't happened yet. I entered the trade already compromised. When price moved against me even slightly, my ability to think clearly evaporated. I adjusted stops impulsively, second-guessed my plan, and exited, not because my edge failed, but because my nervous system couldn't tolerate uncertainty. That was the moment I realized staying calm had nothing to do with discipline alone, and everything to do with self-regulation. You cannot think clearly when your body believes it's under threat. The market doesn't trigger that threat. Your interpretation does. Over time, through repetition and pain, I learned that pressure spikes when three things collide: oversized risk, emotional attachment, and lack of trust in process. Remove any one of those, and pressure becomes manageable. Remove all three, and calm becomes possible even in chaos. I learned to downsize not just to protect capital, but to protect cognition. Smaller risk gave my nervous system room to breathe. I learned to predefine decisions, so I wasn't negotiating with myself in real time under stress. And most importantly, I learned to accept uncertainty as permanent, instead of treating it as a temporary problem to solve. That acceptance changed everything. Pressure no longer felt like an alarm. It felt like information. I could notice it without obeying it. Through the dot-com aftermath, the 2008 crisis, and the COVID volatility, I saw the same pattern repeat across traders. The ones who panicked weren't the least skilled, they were the most emotionally invested in being right. Calmness under pressure isn't about confidence, it's about humility. It's about knowing you don't control outcomes and building your behavior around that fact. I stopped trying to calm myself down mid-trade and started designing my trading so calmness was the default state. Fewer trades, clear rules, defined risk, planned exits, time away from the screen. These weren't lifestyle choices, they were psychological defenses. And slowly something shifted. Pressure still showed up, but it didn't dominate. I could feel fear without acting on it. I could feel excitement without chasing it. I could sit through uncertainty without inventing action. That's when trading stopped feeling like combat and started feeling like execution. Calmness didn't mean I cared less. It meant I trusted my structure more than my impulses. And that trust was earned, not imagined. It came from seeing that when I followed my process under pressure, outcomes, even bad ones, were survivable, while emotional decisions under stress were always expensive. Staying calm became less about inner peace and more about external preparation. I prepared so thoroughly that there was nothing left to debate when the pressure arrived. The market could move violently, and I could remain still, not because I was brave, but because I had already accepted whatever came next. And that acceptance, hard-won and deeply uncomfortable at first, was the foundation of every moment of clarity I've had since, because once you stop fighting uncertainty, pressure loses its grip, and the market stops feeling like a threat and starts feeling like an environment. You know how to operate in an environment where fear is present, but no longer in charge. And that realization marks the point where trading psychology stops being a concept you study and becomes a skill. You live one that only truly reveals itself when the pressure is highest and the stakes feel real, because it's in those moments that the market asks you a simple question you can't dodge. Can you remain steady when everything inside you is telling you to react? And the answer to that question is never found in theory, only in practice. Only after you've been tested enough times to understand that calm under pressure is not the absence of fear, but the ability to move forward, even when fear is present, controlled, acknowledged, and no longer allowed to dictate your decisions. And once you grasp that distinction, you stop chasing calmness and start building the conditions that allow it to exist naturally. Because when you do, that calmness stops being something you chase in the heat of the moment and becomes something that's already there before the pressure even shows up. In the later years of my career, I noticed that the moments I handled best were not the ones where I tried hardest to stay calm, but the ones where my structure left me no room to panic. Risk was already defined. Decisions were already made. I wasn't asking myself what to do while the market was moving. I was simply executing what I had decided when my mind was clear. That separation, thinking in advance, acting in real time, is what finally broke the grip pressure had on me. I also learned that calm under pressure is cumulative. It's built trade by trade, loss by loss, through evidence that you can survive discomfort without self-destructing. Every time I followed my rules during stress and lived to trade another day, my nervous system learned something new, that uncertainty was tolerable. Over time, that lesson sank deeper than any affirmation ever could. Pressure still showed up, but it no longer felt like an emergency. It felt familiar, manageable. And that familiarity created space to observe instead of react, space to wait, instead of force space to let the market come to me instead of chasing it. I also learned to respect recovery as part of psychology. Stepping away after intense sessions, protecting sleep-limiting screen time. These weren't signs of weakness, they were maintenance. A burned-out mind cannot stay calm under pressure, no matter how strong the strategy is. Calmness is fragile when you neglect the human carrying it.